Hi, everybody. I'm Robert Graham, and I'm here today with Patrick Thompson of Inkstone Mobile. Um, Patrick has 14 apps in the App Store. He's been building up that portfolio, and I'm excited to talk to him today about how he did that. Hi, Patrick.
Hey Robert, how's it going?
Doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Oh, good.
Cool. So today we're going to talk mostly, and this is kind of different. We're going to talk mostly about mobile apps, and some of these tactics may apply to other industries and other domains. But I think this is a really cool topic because mobile's really big. It's growing really fast. So could you tell us a little bit about how you got into that space?
Yeah. So it was about 4 years ago now. It's early 2009. I had left the company I was working for, helped them sell off my business unit. They wanted to consolidate, and I had sold them a startup I did earlier, and I didn't want to go back to a big company. I didn't want a boss. I wanted to do something on my own again. So I started looking around for ideas, and I had a bigger idea that I thought would have some legs, but it was too big. It wasn't something I could do on my own. I would have had to go get funding and spend 6 months going around asking people for money. And at the end of the day, I felt I'd end up with a boss anyhow. So I I decided to scale back and look for something that I could start on my own. And the App Store at the time was gaining some traction. There were maybe 30, 40,000 apps in the App Store, which I thought was a lot at the time, but it's grown a lot more since then. And I'd used a speed reading app like 10 or 15 years earlier, and it was horrible, and I had ideas about how I could do it better. So I put it on the shelf, one of those ideas to maybe do one day. And I started looking at the speed reading apps on the App Store, and they're pretty horrible. So I thought there was a market opportunity there. So my idea was to do what I called a speed reading ebook reader, basically an ebook reader, but with a guide that you could set. So it's kind of like the Evelyn Woods reading dynamics method, where you use a guide, either your finger or a pen, to move your eyes through the text. The same thing, but with a highlight or an underline, and you could set the speed from 10 to 4,000 words per minute, and set the number of stops per line. It could stop two stops, two times per line, or three or four, or you could do multiple lines at a time. So to allow people to practice speed reading with interesting reading material. So I started with that, and I had about 10 books originally, and I added copy and paste support so you could import your own content. And but I wanted a lot more books. So I added support for EPUB, and then I went to the guys at FeedBooks, which is an online site with a lot of public domain books and really nicely formatted. And I asked them, "Can I use your books?" And they said, "Sure. Just keep the attribution in there." So I added 50 books to the app, and then I created French, German, and Spanish editions of the app, and then a young reader edition. And in talking to the guys at FeedBooks, they said add support for OPDS, which is a new book catalog standard that they were involved in. If you add support for that, then you'll get access to all of our 25,000 books, plus over 2 million books in other catalogs on the internet. So I did that, and then I had access to all those books, and by that time it turned into a general ebook reader. So, and there were other public domain ebook readers that were doing pretty well on the App Store. So I stripped out the speed reading functionality and just created a $2 ebook reader app. And then I created a light version of that. And then after that, I stripped out the ebook reader altogether and created a free app that allows you, called ebook search, that allows you to find all those books, but then open them in another ebook reader app, like the iBooks app or the Kindle app or whatever ebook reader you want. And then I monetize that with advertising, and I use that to cross-promote my other apps. And then I created a paid version of that with a couple more catalogs and no advertising, and that's done surprisingly well. And then after that, I got involved in this OPDS standards group, and we were talking one day, and they said, we'd like to extend OPDS to other media types like audiobooks. And we know the guys at LibriVox, if we could get them to add an OPDS catalog, would you create an audiobook app? And I said, sure. I'd been thinking about doing that anyhow. And I ended up actually creating the OPDS catalog myself, creating my own server-side infrastructure for that. But it gave me access to more content. So I have all the LibriVox content. I've got a large French audiobook catalog. I've got kids audiobooks, audio poetry. So I have 4 audiobooks now. I'm working on a couple more. And then the next step is a couple music apps. The thing is, all of these apps are out of the same code base. So, 14, soon 19 apps out of the same code base, which I found has worked really well being an independent developer, to,
Right.
maximize your assets as much as possible. And that's worked out really well. Building out a portfolio like that, it's not only allowed me um, to create a number of products that kind of balance each other out. So it's kind of like an investment portfolio. I've got a bunch of different apps. They do well in lots of different countries. So interestingly, my revenue from day to day is within $50
Wow.
typically, which is pretty amazing. And then I use the portfolio to cross promote. So the different apps in the portfolio cross promote to other apps.
Okay. You mentioned support for other languages and internationalization. Um, how big of an impact has that made for you with your portfolio?
It's huge. International revenue is it's two-thirds of my
Oh, wow.
overall revenue, and it's I find that most people focus on the U.S. App Store, but and because of that, I think there's less competition in other countries' app stores, and people game those app stores less. And you can really stand out by localizing your app description and your app itself, because if somebody is in Mexico or Spain and they don't um, they're not native English speakers, or they're obviously not native English speakers, but they don't speak English well. They're obviously going to be attracted towards apps that are in their language.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. This is kind of a side trip, but I'm curious what kind of a process did you go through to get those localizations done? I assume you don't speak all of the languages.
No. um, there's a so you have to localize your app, and Apple makes it pretty easy to do that. And then I go to a site called I Can Localize, which is and there's several sites like that. It's kind of like an Elance or an Odesk for localization. So you put up a project, and then you choose your translator. And then after that, whenever you upload new strings, they get notified and they do the translations. And then you can just download the strings file, for each language into your app. So the
Okay.
process is really easy once you get it set up.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so we kind of led into this a little bit with you talking about some of the international app stores, but what kind of keys have you found for improving your conversion with your different apps in the portfolio?
So well, there's a few things. One is have a good app. You know, I guess there's two things. One is, how do you decide what to build? What will convert well, and the other side is once you have that, how do you maximize your conversions? So on the first side, deciding what to build, I find the price points are so low in the App Store that it's really hard to do well with a niche app. If you're selling an app for $2 for a total world market of 100,000 users, and you might get some small percentage of those, you're not going to succeed.
Right.
So I find it's important or what's worked for me is to go mass market. Go for something that will have mass appeal, and on the international side, go for something that will have international appeal, either
Right.
international content. For example, in my apps, I've got international books and audio books. So that's one. And then also go for something that I would say is a little bit hard. If you're a developer, if you're a good developer, do something that not everyone could do. So everyone these days wants to create an app, right? And they either they're just learning to program, or they go to India or China and try and get their app made.
Right.
So they're not going to get the most complex app built using either of those methods. So you can kind of separate yourself a little bit by doing something that not everyone can do. And then when you're developing your app, it should satisfy a need, a mass appeal need, and it should look really nice. The design should be really good. And most developers, if you're a developer, if unless you could survive and feed your family, doing design work, for iPhone or mobile apps,
Right.
don't even try it. There's professionals out there that will do a much better job than you will, and it will really make a difference in the end.
Right.
And the majority of the apps on the App Store are horrible. Uh,
I,
in
I think
terms of
the
their
majority
design.
of software in general is pretty horrible.
That's
uh, but I am curious about your. I mean, you make a really good point about design, and I've noticed myself as an app consumer, um, like the more attractive things look, the more likely I am to look at it or to buy it. So, what kind of outlets do you have? Someone local? Did you use something like 99 Designs, or how did you manage getting design work done, especially across so many apps?
right. Um, I use designers. The first designer I found through Elance.
Hmm.
And this was 2009, and at the time, the bar was really low. Most people just use the vanilla generic Apple design, which looks pretty awful. Though in iOS 7, I think you're going to be able to create apps that look pretty nice using the generic design. But prior to iOS 7, if you just use the standard design elements, it looked pretty awful. And in 2009, that's what most people did. Um, and so I got a designer, and he did a nice job for the time, and people thought it looked amazing. It's grown a little bit tired now. I mean, a little bit old, just because more designers have gotten into it, and the bar has been raised. So my initial designer I found off of Elance, and then when I did my audiobook apps, I went to a new designer that I found on Dribble. So Dribble is a great resource for finding good designers. It's a community where designers can post their work, and they can follow each other and comment on each other's work. And there's some really amazing designers there. Um, and the best ones won't even respond to you. They're just they don't need any new work. So I found it's what works well is to find a designer whose work you like. Yeah, but they're not so popular yet,
Right.
and they're trying to create a name for themselves. And my current designer, I found through Dribble. He's in Italy, and he does amazing work.
Nice. Um, so I know I've sort of been around Quora a lot lately, and I've noticed a lot of people have trouble either retaining customers or cross-selling customers or just keeping people engaged in their apps in a mobile context. So, what kind of tactics do you have for engagement or retention among your customers?
So, in terms of retention, it's a couple things. One is having good content, and having, I guess, evergreen content, or content that have an app that people come back to. So, a weather app's a great app because, people are always checking their weather.
Right.
Or, my apps, I have lots of books. So people, they'll read a book and they'll come back for another one, or they'll listen to an audiobook or come back to another one. So, one-shot apps or apps that people get tired of quickly. A fart app, how long can you,
Right.
enjoy a fart app? But if you have content that people will want to come back to, then that's one. So just organically, naturally,
Right.
people will want to come back
Is
to it.
that aspect of the book readers and everything? Is that something that you planned in, or is that like a happy accident of that you stumbled into?
Yeah, that was just a happy accident.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting, the whole, I started with that speed reading app, and I had no idea what I would do after that.
Right.
That was kind of the end goal. But then that evolved into, the ebook reader and the book
Right.
discovery app and the audiobook app. It's kind of like things became apparent as I went along. I kind of stumbled into them, or, serendipity had a a large role in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of fell into that. The other thing I do, so the kind of the more active things I do for retention is I use push notifications. So I started gathering. So push notifications in an app. You can ask a user when the app first starts if they'd like to receive push notifications. And the nice thing about push notifications is people will, when you do a push, people will see or get that message outside of the app. So they don't actually have to be running the app to see your message. And I started adding those 2.5 years ago, I guess. And I have over a million devices now, or a million users that I can do push notifications to.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that a friend showed me. It was a couple years ago, 3 years ago. A friend had just added push notifications to his app, and we were having coffee together, and we were just amazed. He opened his console, and like a third of the people were agreeing to it, and we had no idea why, but I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. So
Right.
I just added it, and today I have over a million people. I can open up my laptop right now, and I could send a message to a million people, which kind of blows my mind. But the way I use that is if I have new content available, or if I have a new update available, I'll send a message. So it's a useful message, and that brings people back to the app. Oh yeah, ebook search, or oh yeah, mega reader.
Right.
I haven't opened that app for a while, and they'll come back to it. And that I monetize that immediately with my free app, because then they see the advertising in the app. They see my cross promotions in the app for my other apps. When they click on one of those, I get affiliate revenue. So I get an immediate bump in revenue from that. In addition to the benefits of retention, where somebody comes back to the app, they're reminded that they like the app, they tell their friends about the app, so it helps with I believe it helps with the word of mouth aspect as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds good. So what about data wise? It sounds like you have some information about what customers are doing, but do you track engagement information and usage information, and what do you use to do that?
Yeah, I do. So for general analytics and tracking that usage information, I use a service called AppSolar. And I think Flurry is probably the most popular one, and I used Flurry originally, but I was frustrated with it because it doesn't allow you to do cross-app analytics. Okay. So my question at the time was, I have a light version of an app and I have a paid version of an app. Is my light version working? So the idea of the light version is to allow people to try it out, and if they like it, then they buy it. But right. I didn't know if that was actually working. And Flurry only allowed you to do in-app analytics, so you could get analytics from within one app, but not across apps. And that's when I discovered AppSolar. And AppSolar is really cool. What it allows you to do is do cross-app analytics. So you set up what they call funnels, where each step in the funnel is associated with an event. So for example, in my free app, I do cross promotion to my paid app. So in the ebook search app, I promote the ebook search pro app. So sometimes when they start the app, I'll show them what's called a nag message, which is just a modal that says, ebook search pro, upgrade to ebook search pro and get 2 more catalogs and no advertising. And then there's a learn more button. If they tap the learn more button, it takes them to the app store. So I set up my funnel so that the first event is showing them that modal. The second event is them clicking on the Learn More button, which takes them to the App Store. And the third event is them actually opening the app that I'm cross-promoting. So in this case, it'd be the ebook search pro app. So you can actually see the percent of people that convert at each step of the funnel. And then what you can do is you can use that for testing. So you can test different messages, different ad copy, which is really nice because in the App Store, unlike the web, you don't have any kind of analytics on your app page, on your app description page. Right. You don't know how many people visited, how many people converted. So there's no way to really test your change copy or change a
Right.
headline and see if that works. I mean, on a very gross level, you can see, but it's really hard to tell. So this is a way, kind of a micro way that you can test messages or headlines, um, that sort of thing.
Right.
So AppSolar is I found a great tool for that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to get especially to get the cross app engagement.
Right.
Um, so for you, what is the life cycle of a mobile app like for you with a big portfolio, and how do you continue to promote some of your older apps? Is it just in cross app promotions, or is it just push notifications, or what other tricks do you have?
Yeah, it's primarily cross promotion between my apps. In terms of the life cycle, there's kind of two steps. And when you first release an app, what you really want to do is have a kind of a burst, do a burst campaign, so you get driven up into the top 100 of a category. Now, on the App Store, you're virtually invisible unless you're in the top 100 of a category. So that's the main thing. Drive yourself into the top 100, and then after that, try and maintain that. So try and maintain the buoyancy of the app in the top 100.
Right. What are some things you've tried to do to stay in the top 100?
For me, cross promotion's the primary tool I use. I've tried some advertising. It hasn't been too effective for me, especially on an ROI basis. But it's if you look at the App Store, there you have kind of different scopes of visibility. So there's hundreds of millions of people with credit cards registered on the App Store, people with devices. But how do you get visibility to those people? So one way is if you're in the top 100 of a category, people go and search a category and they'll find you. Some subset of those hundreds of millions of users will go to the App Store and they'll see you there. Other ways are advertising. So you're advertising in other people's apps, so you get visibility into those scopes, their
Right.
user base, and you're paying for that. And then the other way is to if you have your own user base, you have that's you have your own scope, and you can message them for free, as long as you don't piss them off. Um, you can message them. So use your own user base to cross promote your apps, and that's been the most effective mechanism for me.
Right.
Um, one other thing I'd say, kind of just that these are kind of basics, but they're really important. When you release an app, well, when you go to the App Store, either on your phone or on iTunes, there's kind of a conversion funnel there, kind of like on the web. So if you're on your device, you're looking at a category, the first thing you'll see is your icon. So the icon has to really stand out. It has to really pop, for one. Back to good design. It has to have a nice, clean design. It has to look good, and ideally it should give people a hint of what the app is about. So for my audiobook apps, the icon is kind of a three-dimensional view of a book with a speaker on top. So it kind of gives a hint of what the app is about. The second thing they'll see is the app title. And again, that should be descriptive. It shouldn't be, it's really hard to establish a brand name on the App Store without a lot of money. So, go for something descriptive, again, so people will get an idea what the app is about. And then if they click through that, they're going to see the number of reviews and the rating. It's important to have a high rating. And then they'll see the first screenshot. And you can have anything for your screenshot. Lots of people just use screenshots from the app, but I found it's very effective to use that first screenshot to have ad copy on that screenshot and call out the high points of the app. That's very effective, and I've measured that, and that works very well. And then after that, they might see the first paragraph of your description. So the first paragraph of your description should really sell and attract people, and then they might click through and see the rest of your description. So those are kind of the basics, and you need to pay attention to each of those when you launch your app because that's going to have a big impact on your conversion rate.
Right. So do you have a point with your conversion rate where you say that's good enough and you kind of move on to focusing on other things, or is it something that you're always chasing a little bit?
It's you're always trying to keep it up there, but I have some apps that have done really well. They go to the top of the category very quickly, and it's pretty easy to keep them there. I've had other ones I've launched where it was kind of a struggle to get them there, and then they don't have any buoyancy. They just come down.
Right.
You try different things. You try and keep them up there, but after a while, you need to move on and focus on either the apps that are doing well, or even better, work on some new apps.
Right. So do you ever is there ever a process of like getting in touch with customers, especially early on in an app, to see why it's succeeding or failing, or is that just difficult to do in the mobile context?
It is pretty difficult though I do have a mechanism for that. I Well, you can look at the reviews, right,
Sure.
in the App Store, which will give you some indication. But one thing I do, which helps me to get feedback, and also it helps with my review ratings, is I use a component in my apps called App Booster, and that allows people to give feedback within the app, or for me to send messages to them, or surveys, or cross promotions. But what I found works really well for is if somebody's frustrated with the app, they'll go there first and they'll vent, and then they're less likely to go to the trouble of going to the App Store and putting in a negative review, which I can't respond to anyway. Whereas if they send me a message saying they're frustrated or they can't figure out how to do something, then I can respond to them and hopefully get them to a point where that they're happy with the app. But in any case, they're less likely to go to the App Store and give a negative review. So that's one point where I can have kind of a conversation with my users directly within the app. The other thing I do is I have some beta users that I will go to for new apps to try it out before I launch it. That's very helpful as well.
Did you recruit them like from friends or from other developers, or is those customers from earlier apps, or what? How did you pick
Yeah,
your
they're
beta?
customers from earlier apps. They're usually people who came to me with ideas or constructive criticism, and I kind of got into a conversation with them, and they expressed some willingness to test out new changes or new apps.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, so would you recommend if someone's just getting started in the mobile space, would you recommend that they made a similar portfolio play, or what do you think the strategy is for someone that's starting out?
Yeah, that's kind of a tricky question. I'd say yes. Portfolio play is the most effective mechanism for promoting your apps. Especially on a low budget.
Right.
And you get that kind of investment portfolio kind of characteristic where the revenue from one app might be down one day and another one might be up, and they balance out. And across different countries, that
Right.
that has the same effect. But I started 4 years ago, and I've slowly built up this portfolio, and I got some. Through my earlier apps, I got featured by Apple, and I've done cross promotion with other developers, and then I kind of built a critical mass for my portfolio, and I'm now able to use that to cross promote my own apps. But if I was just getting started today, it's you have to start with the first app,
Right.
right? And then you have to build up your portfolio and hopefully get traction with the apps as you go along. If you have 15 apps and nobody uses them, that's not going to help you either.
Right. The portfolio can't be totally unused.
Right.
Cross promote to nobody.
Exactly. So it's I would say yes, that's the best if you can.
Cool.
Um,
So I know the audiobooks app was pretty new. When did you put that out?
that was last year,
Last year.
sometime
Okay.
like in the fall last
Okay.
year.
So what's up next? Do you have something you're working on now?
Yeah, I have a couple more audiobook apps, an audio poetry app and a kids audiobook app, and I have a two music apps that I don't want to say too much about right now, but it leverages the same infrastructure I have for the content server that I use for my audiobook apps. Um, and those again will be out of the same code base. But I've kind of reached the end of what I can do with this code base. I've kind of squeezed it and squeezed it for all it's worth. And so there's maybe a few more opportunities, and maybe for selling content within the apps. But I've kind of reached the end of what I can do with this. So I've started a new company with a guy I used to work with, and we're going to be focusing initially on mobile health and quantified self kind of apps.
Okay.
We have three initial apps we're working on, and we're going to leverage some of my existing infrastructure, and also use my existing portfolio to give the new apps a leg up.
Boost. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
So if people are trying to find you or find your apps, where should they go?
Yeah, so if you go to inkstonemobile.com, you'll see links to all my apps. And if people would like to send me email and say hi, I'm Patrick at inkstonemobile.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Twitter at P. Thompson, though I'm not a very frequent Twitter poster, tweeter.
That's okay. I'm kind of occasional Twitter poster myself, but uh, yeah. All right. Well, it was great to talk with you, Patrick. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure, you bet.
yeah, and best of luck with the new medical uh, self status apps. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, should be fun.
All right.